Everyone on earth feels lonely and isolated sometimes, but it turns out this is especially common for people who were abused or neglected as kids. And I felt so relieved when I learned that, because I honestly thought there was something seriously wrong with me for having so much trouble connecting. Healing my childhood PTSD symptoms has opened up a whole world of possibilities for me and for my life, because at last I understand how that alienation from people happens, how it's a trauma thing, part neurological, part emotional, part psychological, part cultural. But now I know how to heal that. So a few years ago, I took this topic on this channel, and it was a very tiny channel back then, and this was before the pandemic, and I made a series of 4 videos about isolation that later became my mini course that was all about isolation, which last year I developed into my Connection Bootcamp course. Learning how to connect with people is so popular on this channel, so I wanted to bring back these videos that really helped put Crappy Childhood Fairy on the map. So over the next few weeks, I'll be sharing one video every Monday on my isolation and loneliness series. What I'm sharing with you here is near and dear to my heart. It's how I healed, and I hope you find it just as helpful as these lessons were for me. So here is the first video in the series. For this video and the next few videos, I want to talk about one of the biggest, most common adult symptoms of childhood trauma, and that's isolation. And since I've been making these videos, I've received hundreds and hundreds of comments and emails where people with complex PTSD and childhood PTSD share with me how much they're suffering with loneliness, isolation, feeling cut off from people in their lives. And it's not just people with trauma. Lots of people are isolated. But for those of us with a rough childhood, it can be extra strong, extra limiting, and very hard to get out of. So I want to talk about why that happens and how to start healing it. Now, part of the urge to isolate is learned. It was a protective measure back when you were being traumatized. Maybe you became a black belt at cutting off connection from dangerous people, even while you kept a smile on your face and interacted just enough to show the world that you were okay. Your isolating tendency could also be partly neurological, a brain thing that might have developed in your very early years because you didn't get the connection and attention that babies and toddlers need in order to grow the neurons that support connection with other people. It's a developmental delay for us, and something we may have to work harder at than people with a normal ability to connect. Now, just to be clear, isolation is a different thing than solitude. Solitude is the choice we make at times to be by ourselves, to focus and recharge and collect ourselves before we return to our normal level of connection with other people. And some of us with past trauma, we actually have kind of a hard time taking solitude when we need it. It's a good thing to know how to do, and it's good to be comfortable with it. But isolation is a different thing. It's a state of living with very little connection to other people and without meaningful relationships. We all do it a little bit at times, but if it gets so bad that it's blocking you from being happy or functional, it's time to shift it. And that can be hard because when life gets stressful, which it often does, PTSD symptoms can make it very tempting to go isolate further. Now, research shows that loneliness itself is a factor in the development of complex PTSD, and it's a factor causing loneliness to last longer than it otherwise would. So no wonder it's hard to heal. Loneliness increases the chance that traumatic events will cause CPTSD, and loneliness makes the symptoms of CPTSD last longer. So what this tells us is that your best chance to overcome the harmful effects of CPTSD and childhood PTSD, the depression, the dysregulation, increased risk of serious health problems, and yes, the isolation, the best chance to recover from it is to strengthen your ability to safely connect with other people. And just in case you don't know what makes this kind of PTSD complex, it refers to trauma that happened on an ongoing basis, usually early in life. So you'll hear me say childhood PTSD and complex PTSD almost interchangeably, because childhood PTSD is a large subset of CPTSD, and the symptoms are similar. So apologies in advance if this drives you crazy. So loneliness, it turns out, is not just painful emotionally. For your body, it's poison. For your recovery process, it's like chaining yourself to a wall. You'll have just a little space to move around in if you're operating within loneliness. And yet connecting with people,
is risky, it's triggering, and we screw it up all the time. And we get in deeper sometimes than we can manage. And that's really common. And I'll be taking on each of those obstacles to connection in the next few videos over the coming weeks. Some of you have written to tell me that you're resigned to loneliness. And this is not uncommon in people who have been severely abused, especially as time goes by. So, okay, it's everyone's right to pull back from people if that's what they need to do. But if you have a desire in your heart at all to reconnect with people and enjoy more friendship and love in your life, please stick around for these videos. You may have gotten a little used to a high set point of isolation, the level you tend to hover at because it's just so costly to your state of mind to even try to connect. I totally understand that, but I want to make a strong case that learning to connect with other people is something that's worth the struggle. I'm a big champion of titrating, taking changes a little at a time in little bites, so to speak, where you try a little something and check if you can tolerate it. Then you try a little more and you check again. And you don't have to go running out and do everything at once. With CPTSD, one step at a time is usually the best long-term strategy. Now, as much as we may lean on the idea that we're totally independent and therefore we're strong, living without the love and care of other people does not lead to strength. I've been there, and you probably have too. So your assignment, should you choose to accept it for this video, is to just let yourself be aware of the loneliness and isolation you feel right now in your life. And if you feel sad and scared about it, just know that A, it's normal, B, it's common, especially for people with early trauma, and C, you can walk forward out of isolation step by step, no matter how far in your cocoon that you've been hanging out, and no matter how hard on yourself you may have been until today. Don't beat yourself up for having what's basically a normal reaction to abnormal conditions in your past. You can do this. So keep your eye out. I'll be talking about isolation and the obstacles we have to reconnecting in the next few videos. And in the meantime, I've put a bunch of links in the description section below with tools and resources you can check out if you want to start getting better right away.